Hi, my name is Asia Williams, and I'm a single mother, and I paid off $130,000 worth of debt. Well, um, actually, it was actually terrible. I was living paycheck to paycheck, and I must say that before all of this happened, I did not have a life of debt. I didn't have credit cards. I didn't have the mortgage. I was able to enjoy my life. My son was in private school and all of that, and I was able to enjoy my life. And eventually, I believe because I didn't have the knowledge I needed when I purchased my home, and on top of my expensive truck and my son being in private school, I wasn't able to handle the day to day or month to month expenses like utilities and groceries and things like that. And so, but when I looked around me, that's what everybody was doing. But I got to the point to where I had to make a decision within myself to say, I think I'm going to have to take another road other than what other people are doing. And so basically, that's kind of what got me on the path of deciding that I need to get out of debt, because one of the biggest things that triggered it is borrowing money from family or off credit cards to pay my mortgage, but then thinking like, oh, how am I gonna do this next month? And that's when I said, okay, this has to stop. Before all of this happened, I was able to do what I wanted, when I wanted, and how I wanted. I was able to go on vacation. I used to go out of town for my birthday, able to purchase things for my son that he liked or he wanted. Me and my son to go out and do things together, nicer Christmases. And eventually and slowly over time, I noticed I was having a more difficult time putting gas in my truck. Had a more difficult time paying my son's tuition. Having a difficult time paying utility bills. Almost every utility bill I got from DTE was a red notice saying shut off. It had been many months before I saw a notice that said, that was clear, did black ink on it. So that was something else that prompted it. Being able to buy groceries without bouncing a check. I was almost every time I got paid, I was not really able to use that money present time. It was always money that I was paying back from prior weeks, or paying a family member back. I was never really able to do anything outside of the strict expenses of utilities, gas for my vehicle, a mortgage, my son's private school. There was nothing else outside of that, barely groceries. And even though I had those strict utilities, because I was always trying to catch up, I was never able to be in the present with anything. And so that was very stressful. And all you do when you're in a situation, and a lot of you guys out there, as you listen to this interview, probably have the same situation when you wake up and all you think about is money. Not so much of wanting to flaunt money, but how can I make some quick money? And, some people say, oh, go back to school. It takes time to go back to school. And it also takes money to go back to school. I'm going to say, oh, get your resume together and get another job. You got to find that job. I needed some money ASAP. And so one of the things that I learned in getting out of debt is, number one, you just have to stop. And as scary as it may sound, is that you kind of have to let things happen in order for good things to happen. One thing that I had to let happen is I had to go ahead and let my electricity and my heat get cut off, because once again, it was going to cause me to have to borrow money. Sometimes you have to make very hard decisions in order um, to get the results that you want. It's not always a quick, because I didn't get in debt quick. Thank God, it took time for me to get in debt. And so, of course, it took time for me to get out. And so what I had to do is make a decision to sit down. And the number one thing that I think that helped me is I had to figure out, how did I get here? That's the one thing. And so once I figured that out, how I got here, that's when the light bulb went off. Okay, now that I know how I got here, it's time to get out of here. Because it was doing nothing but snowballing. It started off a small, the credit card was, I had it to use for emergencies, and I ended up using it for paying a house note every month. And so it snowballed into, oh, let me grab my credit card and pay my mortgage. And then, like I said earlier, then thinking, getting smart, eventually the light bulb went off like, if I can't pay the bill this month, how am I going to pay it next month? And eventually, your family gets tapped out, your credit cards get tapped out. You can only squeeze so much out of a check that you're getting at your job. And it's not always about, I need another job, I got to get a promotion. You have to sit down sometimes and think, what is really the problem? But one of the main things as far as the steps is you have to do it. There's no magic in it. You have to freaking do it. You just got to do it. A lot of people are looking, they read thousands and thousands of books with the same information, but they don't have any action towards it. And that's one of the things is that I think that was the biggest thing. And my biggest fear is that, I'm going to have to do something about this. That was the biggest thing. And so one of the first things I did is I sat down and I said, okay, how did I get here? So number one, what is the root of me getting in debt? The other thing, once I found that out, and that is very important, the other thing, once I found that out is I had to sit down and I had to do a budget. Because what I was doing, one of my biggest problems is I was doing my budget in my head. I would know what my paycheck was, and I would just do it in my head. Okay, I got this much money, and I'm going to pay this and pay that. Not realizing that maybe I have bills that automatically come out. Not realizing that maybe I promised to pay somebody back last week, and I done spent the money already. Or I want to get some coffee at Starbucks, or whatever the case is, just frivolously spending money. So I had to sit down and I had to do a budget. And basically a budget is really simple. It's just a spending plan. I had to sit down and figure out, okay, what are my expenses every month and how much are they? That's one. That's the main thing that I had to do so I can see where am I at. And then the next thing I had to do that I didn't know, which is amazing, I had no clue how much I made total each month. I didn't know. I knew what my check was every 2 weeks. I think I was getting paid every 2 weeks at the time, but I had no clue how much money I was bringing in every month. So I wasn't able to take that total from my monthly expenses and what I bring in to see, oh, I'm spending too much, or, oh, okay, I'm good, I got an extra $400. I was basically just throwing money out to whoever wanted it first or whatever I wanted to do first. And so I had to do a budget to find out, number one, what do my expenses total each month, and what do I bring in each month, and compare it to that total. And so once I did that, I was kind of able to see where I was, and it was not a good, honestly, this is the one thing that I do when I have clients is we go through and we do a budget form, and most of my clients have never had a budget. And so what I do is I have them write all their expenses down, and this is our first meeting, is we add it up and we compare it to their income. And in most cases, people are crying because they didn't know that was a situation. Almost every time, guaranteed, they're crying, or they can't believe it. Wow, I'm $250 short, and this is why, because of this or because of that. And so that was a very important, something that I had to do, is to budget. The next thing I did is I got organized. I had papers and bills and everything all over the place. So I simply went to Office Depot, and I got a file tote and some manila folders, and I filed all of my important papers like my birth certificate, Social Security cards, bank statements, check stubs, things like that. I filed those away. Then I had a special place where I put for bills. This is bills that I was getting in every month, so I could make sure that I looked through them every week. Then I gathered debt bills that I had from debt, so that I can separately find out, because I didn't even know how much debt I was in. I had no clue. Another thing that I did is I started a debt cancellation plan, and basically what that is where, okay, I've already figured out what my expenses are. I know how much I make in a month. I know how much it is compared to my expenses. And what I did is say, okay, what can I eliminate in my expenses, or what can I cut down? and then take that extra money and put it towards my debt. Now, one of the things that I do that I think is a good idea, and this is a true story. I did not read Dave Ramsey. I didn't even read a book. This was just me sitting down, and God, Holy Spirit, instructed me what to do. Is I listed my debt from smallest to largest, and I paid them that way. For some human beings, I would have to say for the majority of human beings, we get gratification off of completing something. And so if you have a bill that's $15 and you have one for $200, why would you hold off on the $15 bill and work on the $200 one? Pay the $15 bill off, you'll get that momentum, and then you can go to the next one. Maybe the next one is $50. So you knock that $50 one out of the way. So I listed all of my debt from smallest to largest, and that's how I began to knock off those small things so that I can take more focus on the larger things. Now, I do know that some financial advisors and counselors and consultants talk about paying off, the highest interest or the lowest interest. I'm not a person that says, oh, you can't do this and you can't do that or you shouldn't do that. You do what works for you. If you're in debt, do what works for you. Don't let anybody try to corner you into doing things one way, or at least find out what's out there and make your decision that way. So that worked for me. Another thing that was big is that I realized that I had to do is I had to pay my bills on time, because that's how I was going to be able to rebuild my credit, which was very, for lack of a better word, it was jacked up. Credit was jacked up because of the foreclosures. Another thing I did, what goes along with paying my bills on time, is I pulled my credit report, which you can do that for free on annualcreditreport.com. Credit score wasn't really big back then. That was really not really mentioned a credit score. So that was one thing. Another thing that I did was pull my credit report to see what was listed on my credit, so I can also use that as a guide to pay my my debts off. And then the other thing that I did, which got me into being who I am today, is I started reading. I started reading materials on getting out of debt or just being more savvy. A book by David Bach is called Smart Woman Finish Rich, was an excellent book that a gentleman had got me years ago. He got me that book. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Catherine Egan. Her and her husband wrote a book called Dominating Money. I read that book. Also scriptures and stuff in the Bible that talks about money. I read stuff like that. Then I began to go to seminars and little sessions, and then check out things from Susie Orman, and I didn't do it with the intention of being who I am now as far as counseling and finances. I just wanted to have a firm foundation in that area. And lo and behold, I sit here now going out to the community, teaching other people how to get out of debt. Well, as many of you know, as far as my story, that I am a single mom, and my son was probably about maybe 7 when I went through this, because believe it or not, he's 17 now. Ooh, about to graduate from high school. So he was probably about 7 years old maybe when I was going through this experience, or maybe a little bit older, I forget. But I didn't really too much sit him down, and I didn't really have to explain anything to him. I know, but luckily the blessing in it was his father. Me and him weren't together, but he has a good father, and when he spent time with his dad did things with him and for him. Because with me going through the process of getting out of debt, I cut back on doing anything that had to do with entertainment, including things with my son. I just wasn't able to do it. And I remember one time his dad bringing him home when it was his time to come back to me, and he had a Burger King bag, and my son was, just, hey, excited to come back home. And, his dad left or whatever. And I don't know if I was in tears. I probably did cry, because I was not able to do that for my son right now. And one of the things that I had to tell myself, and I literally had to say this out loud, is one day you are going to be able to do that again. And so I was blessed with, my son is he's still an awesome kid. He didn't complain, say, oh, well, we can't do this, or he just rode the ride with me. He didn't even know what ride he was on. But he wrote it with me, and he wrote it with me gracefully, and he actually made it easy for me because he was patient. And so he has reaped harvest out of being patient in that process, because now he is blessed, and he probably gets more than he needs right about now. So I didn't luckily have to involve him in too much in this process because of the age he was. Um, but just, as a single parent, whether you're a single mom, whether you're a single dad, and even nowadays, whether you're a single parent and you're an aunt or you're a grandmother, one of the things that I would have to say, a piece of advice, is to just start. I know a lot of times you can look at the number of your debt, whether it's $5,000, 10,000, 30,000, 40,000, 100,000. I know one person that was in $1 million worth of debt. No matter what the number is, it just, don't say it's too overwhelming, it's too much, I can't do it because of what the number is. There's a quote that I have on my signature at my job when I send emails. It's on there, and it says, "Every great accomplishment is at first impossible." And getting out of debt is a great accomplishment, and it may seem impossible. And so what I would say is to do all the steps that I gave. If there are more things that you know that you can do as far as getting out of debt or just getting yourself in order financially, just sit down and just do the plan. Find out what the route is, budget, get organized, get a debt plan, debt cancellation plan, pay your bills on time, put your credit report, do all the steps. Then, and just in doing that, I promise you, you'll feel 100% better because you're organized and you're in order. And then go from there. And then also, when you're in that position, somebody can work with you. That was one of the things, because I was working to get out of debt, and people saw my my diligence to get out of debt. I was getting a little bit more money on birthdays or Christmas and stuff like that, because they knew what I was trying to do. And so I was able to take that money and to put it on my debt and pay that debt down, because they saw that I was diligent and I was serious about getting out of debt and organizing my life, and also eventually being financially independent. And so don't just look at the number and say, oh, it's so big and I know it's stressful and it's a lot. Don't just look at it and just say forget it. Do what you need to do, and at least start it and get things in order. And then by the time you're doing all of that, you're not going to have time to say that. And then maybe look for that accountability partner, or look for someone like me who's a financial consultant in your area to help you and assist you with doing this. So don't just look at it and get depressed and get overwhelmed, and get somebody with you to help you to get it in order. Would be my biggest advice. That's probably the biggest advice I got, because I know it's dark. It looks dark. It's stressful. It can just feel like a lonely road, because it's your debt. It's nobody else's debt. It's your debt, or it's your financial situation, whatever it is. Just start the process. That's the biggest piece of advice that I would have to say to single mothers and single parents out there.